Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome. I'm Kim Serafini, and it is an honor, privilege, and pleasure to have you here with us today. Together, we are going to do something truly remarkable, absolutely exquisite, as champions of change, so that we can see and feel an improvement in the world that we live in, so that it's brighter and lighter and happier and healthier. We're here today to actually discuss an extraordinary science called positive priming. And you may or may not know, I'm the creator and founder of a trans tech company. They actually call that like transformational or transformative tech. And in essence, it harnesses positive psychology and neuroscience, change management, the power of gratitude, and a whole heap of other principles and practices and philosophies, so that we can finally use something that's affordable and simple and scientifically validated in a very short period of time that actually gives us the edge, an advantage, something astonishing. And I'd like to actually invite you now to listen to a little bit more about how it works and why it works. And more to the point, really understand where this is actually derived from. What was the inspiration? See, I think in the next 30 minutes to 45 minutes, we're going to go through some good news, some absolutely brilliant news, and some bad news. But hopefully there's going to be a happy ending. And interestingly enough, I think we're actually going to understand and appreciate ourselves a little bit more as humans, as gorgeous souls who are just trying to do our very best. And we'll understand what's the price that we pay if we don't positively prime ourselves. So before I dive in, I just want to lay a foundation and kind of go back a couple of steps to figure out who we really are and why it is that we're like we are from a very basic point of view. Because I don't know, is it just me? Or have you also noticed that some of the Netflix programs that you've been watching, even though they might draw you in and captivate you and have you transfixed, as the season goes on, they actually leave you feeling a bit awful. Because there's like tragedy and sadness and aggression. And what's fascinating to me now is that I said to my other half, given what I really appreciate and understand from the fields of positive psychology and neuroscience, from the world of transformational change management, personal development and self-improvement, I know that I can't afford to expose myself that anymore. I'm going to basically do a really quick summary because it's important that we know where we're heading, and it's important to know what's actually standing in our way. So let me just screen share for a second, because I want you to know that when we get this right, what's fascinating is that we are more productive, when we actually perform at a greater level. We're much less stressed, we're happier, we're healthier. We improve our social relationships, the quantity and the quality of them. We're more creative, we're healthier, we're more energetic, and in teams that sell, they actually make more sales. About 37% more sales on average. And this particular group of statistics, it's been repeated and trialed and tested, and I have to say, you can either positively prime yourself and have these outcomes for yourself or not. The choice is yours. But I just want you to think about, how would your life be different if in fact you were more creative and energetic? We're going to go into a couple of little case studies as we go through this, but I want you to know that there's a reason why we as human beings essentially get in our own way. And it's because it's actually normal. It's the primal part of us. It's the instinctual part of us. It's the way that we've actually been wired, hardwired. The primitive part of our brains, that reptilian brain, it came about and it actually is a force to be reckoned with. Thank goodness, actually, because it serves us as well. But you've no doubt heard about fight and flight. We as human beings, certainly as we evolved, when we were actually presented with a threat, let's just say there was an extremely dangerous animal advancing towards us, we had to make a decision. And in a split second or a percentage of a millisecond, we had to be right about whether that thing was going to kill us and we were dead, or whether we were actually going to be able to fight it or flight from it and survive. So it was actually one of the most extraordinarily potent parts of our makeup, was this incredible ability to make decisions, but this insatiable and necessary, vital, essential parts of us that need to be right. And it's fundamental that you understand this, because if we want to change gracefully, elegantly, easily, simply, quickly, if we want a transformation to be rapid and enduring and sustainable, we need to know how to actually play with ourselves for our own best outcomes, for our own benefit. And it's about this incredible nature that we have to be right. There are people like Dr. Wayne Dyer that talks about it's better to be kind than right. But this happens in fractions of milliseconds. So if I was to actually put you in a torrential thunderstorm where there was an enormous amount of rain, very heavy, thick rain, it would be like putting you in the current modern environment of busyness where there's stimuli. Imagine every little bit of this rain is actually an assault on our senses. It's very difficult if that beautiful rain isn't life-giving rain, even isn't perceived as absolutely refreshing and revitalizing. And if it isn't truly divine and it makes us feel playful, what's the opposite of it? We could actually feel drenched and cold and attacked. And so we as human beings, we actually are in environments all day, every day, and we get to choose the way that we actually perceive them. And we do that based upon essentially our automatic programming, these thoughts and these feelings that we have, the pictures that we have in our mind, our inner dialogue and our self-talks at play here. So the truth is, if it bleeds, we read. And the news knows it and it leads with it. It captures our attention. We focus on it. It sells. And so if we know that, we can actually understand some of our own behaviors and habits. It's almost like in our own lives, let's just say in the financial aspect of your life, if you're spending more or you're losing more money than you're actually receiving or growing or actually in terms of income or savings, there is language in our Western world where we say, you know, the cash flow is hemorrhaging in businesses, or we think of it as bleeding money. Now, when that happens, of course, it captures our attention and we're very proactive and we usually take some initiative. But if it really scares us and we're in fear, we're frozen. And it's almost like we can't act. We can't do what's in our own best interests. It's as if, you know, the spotlights are on us and we're too scared to move. And that's natural. So we have to actually make environments much more peaceful for us. When a part of our body physically bleeds, we also pay attention to it and we fix it. So somehow we've tricked ourselves, or we've been wired and conditioned into believing that the negative is what captures our attention and it's everything, or it's the majority. But we now know that it's not helpful for us. We need to understand that we can actually train ourselves for the positive. And we actually can also know that the positive is a lot more beneficial to us. I'm just going to show you something here about our thoughts. So we have around about 50,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. Scientists have actually been able to discern and decipher the fact that about 50% or more, up to 70% of those thoughts are actually negative. They call them ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. And when you think about this, that means you've got 350,000 thoughts on average a week. And is it any wonder that we're exhausted and we feel weary when we have that much conversation going on inside our minds? But every single part of that conversation is actually communication. It's dialogue with our environment and also with the aspects of our body that are all of our internal systems. In a month, that's 1.5 million thoughts. In a year, that's 6.7 million thoughts. If you've been on the planet for around about 40 years, that's over 250 million thoughts. And if they're mostly negative, if you want to start to change to be positive, it's going to take an enormous effort, like the amount of energy that actually is required to get a rocket to lift off. It's humongous. It's monumental. Unless, of course, you harness some of the greatest advances in technology. And so I want to show you a piece, a tool, a practice, an exercise, an activity that allows you to actually win in this game and succeed. So that you actually, I want you to imagine, get to swim in a pool where you poured an enormous amount of pink food dye, you're swimming through, and now your skin is actually stained pink positive. You have actually saturated yourself, maybe in that torrential rain, with pink positive. So let's just really think about what is required to combat or to balance out or to overwhelm or to create a greater weight for the positive automatic thoughts. Well, the truth is, what I'm going to show you has been scientifically proven. But even better than that, I can kind of tell you a little bit of a background story. So I read that if you see, or if I see, a genuine, sincere, beautiful, honest, authentic smile that these social scientists have actually termed a Duchenne smile, and if you feel that, do you know what's fascinating? There's a part in your brain that actually thinks that you are smiling. And so messages are sent to your endocrine system, and hormonally, you start to produce this fabulous chemical cocktail, and that indeed literally allows you to have a hit of dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, noradrenaline, these endorphins and neurotransmitters, and your brain starts to behave in an entirely new and beautiful, improved way. So what's fascinating about this is that if you were in a group right now, you could turn to each other. If I was actually doing a workshop, I would get you to smile at each other, like really look into each other's souls and send some cheerfulness, some joy. I'd get you to remember something that made you truly happy. I'd get you to smile, right? The incredible thing is I can actually show you a certain number of photographs with these Duchenne smiles, and we can cause exactly the same effect and affect. It's beautiful. So that's one of about 17 ingredients that are part of the formula that actually allows this positive priming tool to physically positively prime you inside 3 minutes a day, where the actual effect lasts for up to 6 to 8 hours. It's really important that you know this, because there are lots of different exercises that I could give you, but very few of them have what we really want is a result inside 3 to 5 minutes. And in most people's lives, they don't have any more than 3 to 5 minutes to actually devote to it. Certainly in most workplaces, certainly in most schools, in most institutions, in most meetings. Everybody has about 3 minutes. So what is incredible, like truly, truly, truly spectacular, is this particular tool works inside 3 minutes. So let's talk about why and how. We're going to talk about how we have this way of being, this operating system that actually prevents us from changing even if we choose to, and how we actually figure out what are the levers to change and how do we actually increase them? How do we integrate them? So I'm going to take you straight to the actual tool and I'm going to get you to experience it. I'm going to explain all of the different aspects of it as we go. So I'm just going to press play. I'm going to mute the music that's automatically with it, and I'm going to explain what's going on and how it's great for you. So, interestingly enough, we have this particular group of flashcards. Imagine it's an incredible presentation. It's so much more than an open eye visual hypnosis. It's also so much more than a mindfulness experience. Some people refer to this as a vision board on steroids, but the truth is it's also an accelerated learning platform. It's a lot all in one, and it's so sophisticated, but yet it's so simple that people often don't understand its complexity. But I truly believe if you really understood what was going on, you'd be more inclined to positively prime yourself every day for at least 3 minutes first thing in the morning and at least 3 minutes just after lunchtime. So I'm going to slow it down. In every single one of these presentations, in one of these shows, we actually call them a session. It's a positive priming experience. We have over 1,000 flashcards. And they're transitioning slowly so that you can actually read out aloud each of the positive self-fulfilling prophecies that are actually being presented to you. And you're allowing your brain to do something very interesting, and that's play with the aspects of your identity. And let's go back to this story that I told you about your ability to make decisions and your need for you to be right about those decisions. So we as human beings, I'll give you an example. We develop our identity, the beliefs about ourselves and how we show up and operate in the world. And then, of course, the results and the habits that actually ensue from that, based upon a couple of different fundamentals. So if I was to say to a little child, oh, you are so polite, or you are so kind, or you are so amazing, their little brain goes, decision time? Yes, I am. I need to be right about this. And so they spend the rest of their lives going off in search of evidence to actually support and build up the scaffolding around that belief. They gather more evidence, they actually reinforce it. And the more and more they do this, it's like when we build a muscle, any muscle, when we actually have a little bit of resistance, that's good for us. But repetition is the mother of skill. Repetition is required to actually build that muscle. But what's fascinating is that later on in life, if we do something where we're actually being very rude or disrespectful, and it doesn't match up with our ideas around what politeness is, we experience something called cognitive dissonance. And we as human beings will automatically realign ourselves. We become congruent. We actually, in 1,000 or maybe millions of tiny little different ways, even in our body language, we actually try to do what is necessary to overcompensate, because we actually do feel bad about being impolite or rude. And we have this aspect of ourselves, this quality of our character, we believe that we are polite, so we behave in polite ways. Well, what's fascinating is that we as human beings, we're much more open to learning. We thrive, and we have all sorts of beautiful systems inside of our body that perform at optimal levels or peak levels when we're actually satiating all of the cells in our bodies or the fibers in our being in something that's truly healthy as a chemical cocktail. So what's interesting to me is that when your brain has those endorphins and neurotransmitters that have been stimulated by you seeing smiles through your mirror neurons, and you're mimicking something much more joyful and positive, I'll tell you what actually happens. And I learned this from Dr. Barbara Fredrickson at the University of North Carolina. And she has this exquisite theory that has been tested and proven again and retested and proven again. And it's called the broaden and build theory. And it's absolutely stunning. When we put people into functional MRI machines and we actually positively prime them with stimuli or these Duchenne smiles, we see parts of their brain behaving in gorgeous, magnificent, magical ways. The very, very parts of your brain that are responsible for creating inspired ideas, for feeling like you're energetic and sending messages to your body to actually wake up, show up, they're activated, and there's more activity. And we actually find that the very parts of your brain that are responsible for solutions-orientated thinking, they're alive. They're absolutely vital at that moment. There's an energy, and it's absolutely exquisite. In a corporate context or in a workplace context, what's fascinating about people who are positively primed is that because of the broaden and build theory, we know their peripheral vision actually expands, it broadens. We also know that they're much more resourceful. We can put problems in front of them or case studies in front of them. This has happened for doctors, and they've come to more accurate diagnoses faster. Or in a manufacturing facility, you actually find that over a period of 100 days, there are less slips and falls and trips and accidents, because people actually are seeing more, including more opportunities, by the way, and indeed more rewards. But if we actually prime them to also look for other people's strengths, because we're actually showing them these particular statements like, I am confident, what happens is they recognize confidence in themselves, and it takes one to know one, so they start to see confidence in others. And it's actually this reinforcing, ever exponentially compounding effect that is the positive. And it brings about the changes that we're all wishing to see and feel. We know that it's not just about smiles, though. We know that if we actually show you an image like that, that is captivating and awe-inspiring, in just a very, very short period of time, your body actually starts to produce more cytokines, which is a protein that is a part of optimal immune functioning. We know that if we show you a group of photographs where 70% of it is tree canopy or green, we know that we can actually produce this effect in you. We know because of some of the work, like let's for example talk about Amy Cuddy's work of the power posing or the victory pose, like put your arms up in the air. And we know that what's actually happening is the chemical cocktail that really is what's necessary for confidence and what's necessary for proactivity and for presenting yourself and shining and feeling like you're absolutely worthy and deserving of doing so. We know that this happens when we physically move our body, but what we also know is if we show you these photographs, your mirror neurons actually think that you're doing this. It sends messages to this magnificent body of yours, and you actually start to react and respond in very, very healthy ways. What's incredible is that some of the research has also shown that if we take a group of people and we negatively prime them versus positively prime them, and then we actually see how they react to pain, the tests, of course, are plunging people's hands into these buckets of ice. You can actually withstand a lot more pain for a lot longer when you've been positively primed. We find that there are mathematics students going into an exam who are positively primed, they actually perform better when you have a group of students that are actually all on exactly the same level. What's incredible is if we show you images of people connecting in meaningful ways, and we show you images of people being kind and generous, people being thoughtful and considerate, we know that the mimicking and mirroring that we do as human beings in the way that we actually learn, it makes you more pro-social. We know that high-performance teams and organizations have this quality where everybody actually likes each other. Everybody is feeling social and friendly towards each other. They're collaborating in much more easy ways. There's a fluidity, there's a flow. We also know, of course, that if we show you images of exercise and movement, you're actually much more likely to go and get yourself a little bit of exercise. We know that if we show you an image of a lemon and you imagine that you're actually biting into that lemon, we know that what is beautiful is that your salivary glands will start to actually be stimulated. And in fact, something incredible happens is that you start to alkalize. No, I'm not saying don't drink the beautiful glass of water with the fresh lemon juice squeezed into it, or don't bite into a lemon. I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying this is the greatest way to actually activate yourself. So to go back a step, I had created this particular experience and I had a feeling that I could make some claims, but I knew that they would be needing substantiation. And so I went to the university at the Gold Coast in Australia called Bond, and I met with a few people who had this very fancy machine that allowed you to actually take a saliva swab and test for cortisol and alpha amylase and a few other things. No longer was blood pricking necessary. And I knew that there was a lot to do with circadian rhythms, but if I actually showed people a Mind PT session and I tested them before and after, and I did all of these people at exactly the same time of the day, and I told them not to drink coffee, et cetera, and to wake up at exactly the same time, we should be able to see a change. And in fact, we did. And upon the results, even though I'm not a scientist and I'm not a researcher, and quite frankly, there are an enormous number of people on the planet who are much better or higher qualified than I am, who have a lot more experience than I do, have a lot more credibility than I do. And you know that whole saying about it takes a village to raise a child? Well, the truth is that even though there are all of these fabulous people with all of this knowledge and a lot of really fabulous people with all of this experience, very few of them are also entrepreneurial like me and are willing to be courageous and vulnerable and take a risk and create an actual technology that physically can be delivered via an app so that people have it at their convenience 24/7. And I think it takes some people like me who aren't greedy, who actually really want to share this with the world and make sure that everybody can access it. And so what's kind of fascinating is that I think that we have something that is harnessing and leveraging the best research findings, applying it and appreciating it, but making it usable by real people. So I actually reached out to one of the people I admire the most and respect the most in the field, Shawn Achor, S-H-A-W-N, Achor, A-C-H-O-R. And I told him how I'd been doing this cortisol testing, and I knew that I really needed to make it work. So I tested people for 15 minutes watching Mind PT. But the truth is, most people don't have 15 minutes in their day. Most people, quite frankly, can't find the time to eat well or do their exercise or get to bed early or whatever else we can do for our own health and well-being. And funnily enough, Shawn came back to me and he said, I'm absolutely captivated. This is stunning. It's spectacular. They're extremely ambitious claims. I'd like to see everything about all of the different ingredients that make up the formula. I understand that this is rather astonishing given that you're not a positive psychologist and you're not a researcher and science buff. But you know what? I'd actually spent a long time in corporate change management consulting in the field of mergers and acquisitions, and I'd actually gone back and studied and specialized in cardiac rehabilitation as a sports therapist, actually qualified as a sports therapist. I'd worked in the spa industry in absolutely beautiful, retreats in India, and I'd set up distributorships in the Middle East and Asia, and so I'd been exposed to, and I'd been fascinated and curious and inquisitive and very much about acquiring the knowledge and applying it with respect to all sorts of different kinds of Eastern philosophies and Ayurvedic treatments and so forth. And so I was pretty confident that all of the building blocks would stack up. Well, I flew to the US at Sean's invitation, and I went and actually saw him speak in front of a group, a huge ballroom of insurance salespeople who were at the top of their game, and they had actually been positively priming themselves inside one of his programs for a period of 3 years. And revenues for this company had gone from, for example, $30 million in the first year to $100 million in the second year to $300 million in the third year to $900 million in the year after that. And there they were celebrating at being nearly at $1 billion. And the actual program that they had gone through was daily positive priming. Now, they didn't call it daily positive priming. They actually called it the happiness advantage. And they didn't have a technology. They actually had lots of very labor-intensive, time-intensive, knowledge-intensive activities that they all had to go through, including, of course, smiling at each other and making meaningful eye contact with each other. They also did a lot of this. They wrote their gratitudes, whereas inside one of these Mind PT or positive priming sessions, what's fascinating is that you're actually triggered with a statement that's about thankfulness. And so your brain is doing your gratitude work as you watch a Mind PT session. And there's lots of fantastic evidence about the power of gratitude and the science of gratitude and the psychology of gratitude. And I would suggest that you, if you're interested in this, go off down those rabbit warrens, and I promise you'll never come out, because it's really, really incredible what we're learning about ourselves. So what happened was, at the very moment that I met Sean, he had just done himself this incredible deal with the Oprah Winfrey Network to teach the science of happiness. And he said to me, if we can objectively prove that 3 minutes of watching one of these positive priming sessions actually works scientifically, I'm all in, and so is my beautiful wife, Michelle. And we will include it as the tool inside the Science of Happiness course we're creating for the Oprah Winfrey Network. And what's amazing was that it was really great PR. Of course, neither one of us made our fortunes out of that. We actually gifted and we served with our intellectual property. And I was so incredibly grateful and appreciative of having this opportunity of having Mind PT by brand name actually inside this Oprah Winfrey Network Sean Acor course. And of course, Sean's very good friends with people like Brené Brown and Amy Cuddy, Elizabeth Gilbert and Dr. Alia Crum. And so I've been exposed to all of the latest and greatest leading aspects of what this essentially has become, which is the science of positive priming. And arguably, I'd be one of the world's leading experts in it. But what's incredible is, did you know you're amazing? Did you know you're amazing? I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm so passionate about this. And I'm going to ask you to join us in sharing the messages about the power of positive priming. You know, Daniel Goleman wrote, like, in 1995, a book about emotional intelligence, and nobody really knew what it was. And we are, 23 years later, and there are lots of people who are on the fast track to leadership, and they're learning much more about emotional intelligence because it's a part of what helps you to actually perform at peak. I believe the next 25 years belongs to positive priming. And I believe that we actually have a tool that has been scientifically proven now to actually deliver that. And I need your help. And in fact, I need you to go and ask for lots of other people's help as well, because we're actually just a small little company. And there are a few of us who are really dedicated and committed. And what we actually need is we need lots of people to download the Mind PT app. And we know that it's not perfect right now. We're actually going through a huge process of improving it. And what we're actually really trying to do is we're trying to positively prime the world. Of course, what we know is that if every single one of us was positively primed, we would be more affective, and our effect means that we would create this ripple effect where we actually do have emotional contagion that's positive and powerful and potent and beautiful. We would all be more kind. We'd all be more graceful. We'd actually have an easier time of it. See, the opposite of people who are positively primed are actually people who are negatively primed. And there's been great research of what actually negatively primes people. And in fact, it's things like the news. Only 3 minutes of watching the news with devastation and death and divorce and disaster and disease actually negatively primes us. And what we know is it narrows our focus and we're more likely to have accidents. So it's important in the workplace. What we know is that our brains actually close down and we can't become a lot more problem orientated instead of solutions orientated. We know that we catastrophize. We know that we minimize. We know that we numb with things like alcohol and digital distraction. We know that unfortunately it leads to the statistics that we're seeing for the number of people with diabetes. Like, I've seen like 400 million people on the planet. And if they continue to head down that path without actually going through a successful change management program on themselves, there's more blindness, there's more amputations. Like, it's absolutely excruciating for me to think about this. What we know is that when you're angry, which is the opposite of being optimistic and enthusiastic, when you're resentful, you've actually got a different chemical cocktail going on in your body, and you're producing more of these acids inside your body, and that's damaging your heart. Your cardiovascular system is absolutely being crucified just by your emotions that are generated by your reactions and your thoughts and your inner dialogue, right? So we know that if about 50% or more of our automatic thoughts were negative, we know that we can see it in everyday life. Like 50% of marriages ending in divorce. Is there any wonder? It's because I would imagine inside those unions, they're focusing on their problems. They're focusing not on the opportunities and the solutions. So I think that if we want to change all these statistics in the world, we actually need, for not only ourselves, but everybody we know, to be positively primed. We do have a crowdfunding, like a campaign or a project to raise the funds that are necessary, because we have really lofty goals that we actually now know how to deliver. So we've got new software engineers working on these programs so that we can actually go into hospitals or into healthcare environments, and we can gift this positive priming tool to people, and we can actually give them a referral code that allows them to do what we call daily positive priming every single day. We've got organizations that are introducing daily positive priming, and it's only $1 a day. So it's about $365 a year. And quite frankly, you get a whole program with that. And certainly we support you and we nurture you, but every single day you get a different session. And each and every single one of these sessions is actually co-created in collaboration, and the contributors are best-selling authors, and they're world-class speakers, and they're amazing researchers and scientists, and they're outrageously successful business people. And every single day, the actual session changes. We've got all sorts of topics that relate to health and well-being, or relate to financial aspects of your life, or the relationship aspects of your life, or the professional aspects of your life. And of course, once somebody's been in the year-long program, sometimes they decide to build their own library of Mind PT sessions, and then they can go to the store and they can buy individual topics for themselves, or they might love someone like Jack Canfield and they might want his session called The Success Principles. So I'm going to ask that you do a couple of things for me. Right now, harness this moment in time and join us and participate in positively priming yourself every single day and inviting everybody you know to do the same. Also ask that what they actually do is they go to our crowdfunding area and they donate or pledge $100. And if they do, we will actually gift the positive priming program that is daily. And so instead of paying $365, you actually receive that inside that $100 package, or pledge is what it's called in crowdfunding terms. And not only that, if they actually go through the library and they see the sessions that they really want, we'll actually package together 20 sessions of their choice and we'll put it into their library for them. And that's a way of saying thank you so much for contributing and for helping us to spread this message. So if you want to actually go and have a closer look, I would love for you to notice the Duchenne smiles that you're seeing. Notice the tree canopy. Notice the power poses. Notice the social connections that you're seeing. And read the positive statements. When you watch a Mind PT session, do so for the first 3 minutes on speed 2, no more. Allow yourself to just relax and absorb and allow the messages. Allow them to float and flow over you and through you. Just emotionally engage in it. When you see something, imagine yourself experiencing that. Imagine the pleasure and allow yourself to actually prime yourself. Does that sound like a great idea? I think it is. And I think it's really worthwhile. And I do believe that it actually does create peace within ourselves. Now, in the last couple of years, we've had over 100,000 people, and it's growing every day, actually use Mind PT. We've got over 64,000 members at the moment, and we're very, very proud of that. But I think it's because it's needed. I actually do believe that we're all sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I believe that we want our dreams and our hopes to be a reality. I think we do want to watch those Netflix programs that have happy endings with a little bit of rainbows and unicorns and fairies. I think we actually need that. We need that for our health, that's absolutely for sure. But we need that for the way that our brain needs to work as well. Every single innovation or breakthrough that happens from creative minds, courageous minds. They're positively primed minds. Every single seriously successful person I've ever come across, and all the research shows, they're actually positively primed. Now, they may not use a positive priming tool inside 3 minutes because there are other things you can do. You can go for a run. You can go to a comedy show and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. You can go for a walk in nature. But if you can't actually do any one of those 3 things in this moment, you can pick up your smartphone or your tablet or log on to the website and you can actually just press play. Just pause and press play and give yourself those 3 minutes. So I think we've actually got an even bigger story. And just before we leave, this is it. For a lot of the people that have been using Mind PT now for several years, what we've actually been doing is we've been tracking a few of them and we're hearing their personal stories. And I'm a keen observer. And we're finding that life still has its tragedies, but they cope with the ambiguity and the uncertainty and the unexpected in graceful, elegant, powerful, strong, proactive ways. We find that they've actually received diagnoses that you'd never wish upon them, but they've actually responded with the most beautiful grace. And they've made the necessary changes, guess what, easily and rapidly, without giving themselves a whole heap of grief. And I think that what positive priming promises is that we actually are going to be protecting ourselves and preventing a lot of what's actually avoidable. And I think we're actually going to allow ourselves to position ourselves to cope with this increasingly changing world. Because quite frankly, artificial intelligence and gaming and augmented reality, it's coming. And some of us are closing our eyes. But you can be eyes wide open. You absolutely can, with glee, like a child, with a curiosity, knowing that if you're positively primed every single day, you're actually going to be able to cope really well. The science also backs that up. So there's no need for us to be defensive and aggressive anymore because we've got a tool that actually helps us. There's no need for us to be short-tempered. We've actually got a tool that we can use. Sure, we're all going to have things that make us worry and make us feel anxious and make us feel fearful, but actually we've got the antidote to that. And what I've actually found as I've been doing more and more research is that people who are negatively primed, or what we call abnormal, do you know what the funny thing is that they're withdrawn from their lives because they're in overwhelm because of the assault that they've actually been experiencing from real life. And they're distrusting and they're cynical and they're skeptical. Funnily enough, they are disengaged. So it's not surprising that 70% of employees are disengaged. It's because they're actually disengaged from themselves and from their lives as well. It's not just from work. So if we want to change some of these things, we actually have to positively prime. Please join me. And if you are really passionate about advocating this, please get in touch with me, or get in touch with one of our authorized consultants or one of our certified masters and invite them in to actually share the power and value of positive priming with either your church group or your network marketing team or your audience or your employees or your students. We need you. We really, really do need you. And you can play such an important part. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your very generous listening. I am incredibly grateful that I have this opportunity, and I'm going to invite you at the very end of this to go off and actually read some of the testimonials that we have from some of the great people that are involved. But I will tell you, there's an amazing man named Professor Stephen G. Post, who I really admire and respect. And he says a little priming of the mind goes a long way in guiding our thoughts, feelings, and actions over the course of the day. Don't get started in the morning like a blank slate. Fill your minds with mind PTs, uplifting images and thoughts, because these will expand outwards, shaping everything you do and every interaction. Priming does make a proven difference in your life and the lives of all who share in your journey. Thanks, Kim, and thanks, Mind PT. So go and have a look at who Professor Stephen G. Post is, and I'm sure you'll come to a very, very fast understanding that an accolade or a claim or any kind of comment from a man of his caliber is seriously one of the sweetest delights of my entire life. Thanks very much. Love you so much, and I'll speak to you very soon.